Okay, looks like we have Victor up already. So, hey Victor, how you doing?
Hey, hello everyone. You good?
Good to have you on here. I know it's we kind of started in Australia and now we're halfway around the world, in France now. So yeah, very much thank you for your time, and coming on here to talk about all things Parrot. We're very excited for the talk. And feel free to go ahead. Yeah, I can give you an introduction if you like. I realize you may want to give one yourself, but for anyone who doesn't know, Victor is the Chief Security Officer and Data Protection Officer at Parrot, in charge of a lot of the security operations over there. So, Victor, over to you. Thanks for joining us, and your screen should be up on the screen very soon.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to speak about Parrot and how we implement cybersecurity. And before starting, I wanted to say that it's great to have such an event in which we speak about drone cybersecurity and counter-UAS and all problems that may be posed by drones. So it's really huge to have such an event, and thanks for that. And thanks also for everyone that is attending to this presentation. So first, I'm going to talk about the cybersecurity of a drone platform. So Parrot is the second worldwide drone manufacturer. And before starting about cybersecurity, I'm going to give you some more insights and information about our latest model of drones, which is called ANAFI USA, because that's the drone we've been working first for the US Army since a couple of years now. And now we are selling it as a specific model to everyone, or at least people that may need it. So important to note that it's a high-performing micro drone in its category. And what we do at Parrot is small drones. We are not focused on drones with we can carry a large payload or anything like that, but we want to have smaller drones that could fit in a backpack of a soldier or a rescue team or a policeman and so on. One strong decision from Parrot was to manufacture this drone in the USA. So of course, this is driven by the fact that we are now working with the Defense Innovation Unit and the US Army, which is great, and it brings a lot to us because it leads us to improve our products and make it even more secure. It's important to note also that we've been working a lot about how we secure the supply chain and where do come the different parts which we need to build a drone. So in the United States, there's a National Defense Authorization Act that gives some constraints and that we need to be compliant with. And basically, this states that we can't include in our drones certain components that may come from adverse countries seen from the United States. So ANAFI USA, that's a professional drone. It's not for techies. Of course, you can take great videos and photos, but it's used for both the public sector, for professional, such as inspection or mapping or agriculture. And it's also done for the public safety and the defense. And like I said before, we want it to be pretty small and really quick to deploy. So our target was to deploy it in less than a minute, which means that you've got it in your backpack. And from the moment that you open your backpack to the moment that the drone is flying, there's less than a minute. So you can unfold it quite easily. As you can see in the video, it's pretty small. and then just end launch it, so that the drone is flying just every moment you need and pretty quickly. And of course, you can also land it on your hand. And it's important to underline that, because for certain jobs, you may be piloting a drone and around you there's snow, sand, or maybe you can be on a boat and you don't want to land your drone on the ground. So our drones, because it's pretty small, because there's some safety features that would, for example, cut off the motors if the propeller touch your hand. This is pretty innocuous, and it's common to do that. It's great for the user experience, and still stay safe doing so. So, of course, that's one of the lightest drones of its category. We've got a great vision capability, both for day and night. And for such a capability, it's only a 500-gram drone, so half a kilo. And it flies for more than 30 minutes, which means that with less than a kilo in your backpack, which means the drone and 3 additional batteries, you can fly for 2 hours, which is quite a lot when you're doing surveillance or mapping or whatever. It's pretty stable, both outdoor and indoor. So it's important to know that you can have a GPS-denied environment, and the drone will still be stable and fly pretty well. And concerning the environment on which you can fly, we are also IP53 certified, which means that the drone can fly under the rain, or even when there's a lot of dust or sand or whatever kind of environment. So it's really robust, and you can use it in pretty every environment. It's important to say that when you're doing surveillance, you really need a quiet drone, because the effectiveness of surveillance is that you will need to see people without them seeing you. So ANAFI USA is pretty quiet. That's 79 dBs when it's just close to you, which means that when the drone is 100 feet from you, you hardly hear it. And then if you are in the middle of the desert with absolutely no noise, you have to be a bit further. But still, it's pretty quiet, and then very effective if you want to stay still and that people don't see you. One of the greatest strengths of ANAFI USA, it's a very powerful zoom. So there's a 32-time zoom, which is great for a drone of this category. Most of the time, 32-time zooms, you would find that in a drone which would weigh something between 5 to 10 kilograms. So here we are 10 to 20 times smaller, which means also that we are more quiet and more still, and less easy to carry on your backpack when you take it on your missions. But still, there's a great zoom, and the main objective of this zoom is that you can detect a person from 2 miles away from you, 2 kilometers away from you. That will be 1 to 2 miles. So on a pretty long distance, you can see things pretty well, and it's important for surveillance. It's also pretty important for the precision of mapping even if you are not doing surveillance. That's an example of a video that was taken by the drone when flying, and those soldiers jumping with their parachutes, they are more than 8 kilometers away. So 8 kilometers would be something like 6 miles. And you see that thanks to the zoom, you can have a clear vision and count how many of them there's, even if it's pretty far from the point where the drone is. Of course, there's also infrared and night vision. Thanks to a strong partnership with FLIR, we have a great integration of their camera. So we include a FLIR boson, which allows a person to see at 200 meters, which means that at night, when you're flying 200 meters away from someone, you can identify the person. So that's the kind of images you may get when you're flying at night. We have also strong knowledge of all wireless protocols. So on our consumers and some professional drones, our most professional drones, we use Wi-Fi, but on a really optimized version of Wi-Fi. Since a few months, we've included also other wireless chips and other protocols, especially for the defense sector. So important to state that ANAFI is real. That's a drone that has been produced and used and by a lot of people, so among armed forces and public safety. We have a long list of users, and that's just a few, but we can mention the FBI, the US Army, the armies in United Kingdom, Switzerland, or France. And there's, of course, many more. It's also used by rescue teams, and especially by CRASAR, which is doing interventions for rescues. And we've been producing more than 150,000 units of ANAFI. So ANAFI USA is just a new derivative of ANAFI. There's a lot of things that are common between ANAFI and ANAFI USA, and what's different is that there's a longer flight range. Of course, there's a way better video camera, both for day and night, but all the rest of the drone is almost the same. So we've been doing we've been doing improvements on those platforms of ANAFI since 2 years now, which means that the software is pretty stable, and it's been tested a lot, both before we launched the product, but we also had a lot of feedback from our users that allowed us to improve our product, and we've been doing so for 2 years now. And important to note that Parrot was the first drone manufacturer that was selling drones to the consumer, and we've been doing so for more than 2 years now. So we've got a high production capability, and we've been producing more than 4 million drones right now, which means that we are able to produce really stable drones, and we have a lot of knowledge from those 10 years of activity on drones. And of course, the greatest strength of Parrot, that's the more than 300 engineers working on drones, improving our products. And before we jump to the main subject about cybersecurity, I'd like to highlight that for those engineering, most of them may be working on the video feed, on the embedded system, on many other aspects of the drones, and not specifically on cybersecurity. But most of them are really have learned a lot on cybersecurity. Some of them are good experts, and cybersecurity at Parrot is not the matter of just a few persons. It's really a culture and a way that all those 300 engineers are really dedicated to cybersecurity. They really do understand what problems are posed about cybersecurity. They think with privacy in mind. Whenever they add a feature, they wonder how we could secure it, how we can prevent users' data to be exposed. And we speak about we speak a lot about technology when we speak about drones. But for me, one of the greatest strengths of Parrot is that the human being behind this technology, the ones that do the drones, and those are really dedicated to cybersecurity and privacy. Before speaking about cybersecurity, I will mention a few innovations. And for example, here you'll see a video of ANAFI USA landing on a truck. So that's one of the features that is used, for example, for border patrols, so that they can have their boat moving or have a vehicle moving, and still they are able to launch a drone and have the drone go back directly to the moving vehicle, and don't waste time and when you've got a person which is dedicated to the task of having the drone land, of course you may waste time, and here the drone is able to land even if the vehicle is moving. We've got a great subsidiary called Pix4D, and they produce great software for photogrammetry, which are used a lot for tactical mapping and also for damage assessment, be that after a hurricane or after a bombing or whatever. So that's one of the main added value of the drones. You can launch it in just a few seconds or minutes, and within a few minutes, you will have a live mapping of the area above the drone or under the drone. And that's great because most of the time when you're a soldier and need a satellite feed, you would need some time before getting that. And maybe that won't be available, or you can have a cloudy weather which would prevent you doing so. And with the drone, you can adapt the way you fly, so you can fly under the cloud and see whatever you need to see. So Pix4D is doing great software, and they are even doing a dedicated software for security, which is called Pix4D React. And the main difference is that you can use it offline. We've got a lot of defense and public safety users that are worried about having an internet connection all the time. And of course, this can be problematic for security reasons. But when they are in the middle of the desert, they may not have those kind of internet connections. So they don't want to be prevented from flying and from having live mapping when they are in that kind of environment. And it's great to have that kind of solution that allows you to do it completely offline. So now we are going to jump on our privacy and cybersecurity concerns. So first, at Parrot, we really have privacy and cybersecurity in mind, and we want to implement privacy by design. It's not just something we do after everything else. That's something that is really deep into all of our processes. And when we develop a new feature, one of the main questions is, how do I secure it? How do I protect the data of my users? And at some point, if we need to share some data or to propose to the user to share some data, we really want that the users has control over everything that is done. So first, I think I said that before, but there's no data transferred by default, which means that we've got web services that allows the user to share data and host flight data on Parrot servers that can be used so that our own users can get the flight data from their computer or from another device or whatever they need. It's also used for customer support to help customers having all the data and being more able to speak about what was done during the flight. But what's important is that even if we implement those features, it's enabled and we transfer data only if the user opts in, and by default, there's nothing. So of course, we are GDPR compliant. So GDPR is a European regulation, and it's not a question of being a European company, because every company, be that an American or Chinese or Russian company selling to European customers, should be GDPR compliant. But we implemented GDPR features and a lot of processes a long time ago, and that allowed us to improve those and to make sure that we didn't forget anything. So it's really important for us first to be compliant to the regulation, but it's also a regulation that drives our own mindset, the way we work and everything that is done in the company. Important to note that it's not mandatory for GDPR, but we host all of our data in Europe, in European servers. FREEFLIGHT 6, that's the application that we provide so that our user flies the drones. So it's the application used to control the drones, to take pictures or videos, and to have a lot more features. And that's also the application that may or may not share data to Parrot servers when the user opts in. So it's important for us that inside this application, there's no obfuscation, there's no hidden features. There's absolutely nothing hidden, and everything is clear to the user. There's no forced update, which is important because most of our users are happy to have the latest update installed on their device, and that helps us. That helps them having everything fixed, everything optimized, and they're happy with that. However, we have a few users, and especially in the defense and public safety sectors, which have been evaluating a specific version of the application. They've been training people on a dedicated version, and for various reasons, be that for security reasons or just practical reasons, they don't want to update. And the way we work is that we propose updates for consumers versions. Those are proposed for installation as soon as they are available to the users. And then for security editions of our drones, that's up to the user to decide whether or not and when they install their updates. So it's not really a technical point, even so a forced update may pose security problems, because that may allow someone to take control of a device if there's a security problem on the update chain. But here we do that so that we have a process that allows the user to decide. That's really up to the user to decide whenever they want to update or not. So I mentioned that there's no data transmitted to Parrot servers by default, and it's pretty easy to obtain. And you have different level of potential data transmission. For example, you can just share anonymous data so that it helps Parrot enhance the products. You can also host all your flight data on Parrot servers, so that you can access it from whatever device you want. And because it's really easy to obtain, we want that it's as easy to opt out. And most projects propose that, but a lot of projects have absolutely no features that allows the user to ask for the data that was previously sent to a server or another. And what we do is that inside our software, we have specific features for which the user can manage all its options, be that for newsletters or share anonymous data, or just in one click. The user can also ask to get all the data for portability. For example, if someone wants to import data, not in a Parrot product, but in another software, then it can ask, the user can ask to Parrot all the data and do whatever it is, because that's the user's data, not Parrot's ones. And of course, there's features in which we can just ask deletion of all previous data, which means that when you share data to Parrot, this data can be sent to multiple servers, because first it may be used on the first part for accessing your flight data online. But then if you call the user support and discuss with user support, you can have partial copies of those data in another system. And then if you share data so that Parrot can enhance products, it may be shared to the research and development departments. And when you click in this delete my flight history, it not only deletes data on the first Parrot server, which is hosted online and on which you can access your flight data online, it really organizes the data deletion on every service, so that we make sure that there's no copy that Parrot would keep. And when you ask for your data to be deleted, when you decide to withdraw consent and not to share data to Parrot anymore, you don't just stop sharing data. You can also ask to delete all previous data that was shared before. So, well, it's really important to know that it's just a one-click option. It's pretty easy for the users, and you won't have to contact the data protection officer. You don't have to go into complex processes and wait for several days or several weeks for that to be deleted. In previous presentations, several speakers spoke about no-fly zones or the problems that flying in dangerous environment may pose. And our way of thinking about it is that we don't want to impose no-flight zone, and especially to our defense and public safety users. but also to professionals, because I will just give you an example, but I was speaking a few weeks ago to an air company that is doing inspection on their planes with drones, which means that inside an airport, they use drones for inspections, but they are allowed to do so, and it's normal, even if having non-authorized drones is dangerous, and we don't want that. We also have professionals and public safety or defense actors who are allowed to fly in those environments, and to allow that, we don't have to have online to have them ask online if they are allowed to fly, because first, that's not the Parrot. We're not the one that should give permission for everyone to fly it, and it also poses a cybersecurity problem, because if we did implement that kind of feature, we would need to get the user's location, and I think that most of the time a public safety entity or a defense entity should not share this location to anybody. That's up to them to fly responsibly. And as that was said in the previous presentation, the bad guys don't care, because they already have drones with no-fly zones, and they already can do whatever they want. So it's more important to focus on effective measures that would prevent the flight of dangerous drones. And for example, at Parrot, we work a lot with different work groups on remote identification. And I find it really useful to have a policy framework and to have real-life implementations of remote identification. So that's effective. And when you are on a sensitive location, you can see all drones. You can see which drones has remote identification. Among those drones, you can define which one you authorized and which one you did not. And more importantly, you can focus on those drones that are not identified, because they don't broadcast any information about those information. So it's important to have that kind of features and to work on how we secure both the integrity and confidentiality of those remote identification, rather than imposing hard to manage features such as no-fly zones. Because we really do care about privacy, we decided privacy and security. We decided to conduct a dedicated security assessment, which would be made public. So, of course, during the previous years, we've been doing a lot of internal audits. We've been improving continuously our products, and on the other hand, we also have a lot of users, and especially in the defense sector, that have been conducting security assessment of our product and services. But we wanted to have one of those public, which is most of the time not possible with a defense entity having independent testing of our product. So a few weeks ago, during a few weeks, and we got the results a few weeks ago, we've been working with Bishop Fox. So Bishop Fox is a cybersecurity company based in the US, and they are pretty focused on offensive security. So they do a lot of code review and penetration testing, and they are used to find vulnerabilities in products. So they have been testing our app FREEFLIGHT 6, both Android and iOS version. So just as I said before, FREEFLIGHT 6 is the application that is used to control the drones, and that may or may not share users' data to Parrot web services and servers. So they did both vulnerability scanning and research. They did a code review of both the application and web services, as well as penetration testing. And you can find the results on our website because we decided to make it public. So we provide the letter of assessment, which details all the results. And as I said before, there's no obfuscation, and they checked on in which condition the application may or may not share data to our own servers or third parties. And of course, they didn't find any difference between what we state and what we do. And for me, it's quite important to be transparent. It's quite important to say what we want to do and to do what we say. And we've been writing in a privacy policy every information that we may collect, on which circumstances we collect it, so that the user knows what is happening. And just as I said before, whatever the user chooses, whether or not he decides to share something or not. So everything that I mentioned before concerning the first update, opt-in, or whatever, Bishop Fox checked that, and both with source code reviews and reverse engineering of the application published on the Google Play Store or Apple App Store. And they've been doing penetration testing to check that if you are an authenticated user, you can't have access to the data from another user. And we are quite happy to see that they found no security and privacy issue. They gave us a few advice. For example, they advised us to encrypt configuration files that is stored inside your own device, so that if you install a malicious application on your own phone, this malicious application wouldn't have access to certain parameters. In addition, there was an unused key that was still stored on the application that we removed in the latest version, but that was not it was not possible to do anything with this key. So they gave us a few advices. We discussed also on some cybersecurity features that we may or may not implement. And it's important to discuss those features because it may seem important to cybersecurity professionals to implement certain functions, but when we think about how our users use the drone and the actual security risk that can be pretty low, we also decided not to implement some features. For example, Bishop Fox proposed that we expire the user login and authentication. And to our point of view, when you're flying your drones, you may need to have to do this very quickly. And let's say that you are a policeman and want to purchase a bad person in the street. You're not going to waste 1 minute authenticating, and we prefer to have authentication that is saved into your device. And it's not a security problem because your device has a PIN code, is encrypted, or whatever the security measures are. But then we target a good level of security, and at the same time have a really appropriate user experience. Another example was certificate pinning. So Bishop Fox proposed that we implement that, but we previously chose not to do so. And for the reason I explained before, concerning the fact that some of the users may want to stick to a specific version of our application. And if you consider certificate pinning, that we need that the day you modify the certificate, you have to force the users to update to a newer version. And if not, you may have a security issue or break the features that uses the connection. And when you measure the risks and benefits from this kind of implementation, we find that it's better to give the choice to the user whether or not to update, rather than force them to do so. The last example of a security decision I made is that Bishop folks proposed that we implement jailbreak and root detection. And for me, jailbreak and root detection may be used to prevent a security researcher to look at what's inside our application. And in fact, I don't care about that. I even encourage every cybersecurity researcher to look at what's inside our own application. And that's why I don't want any obfuscation technique. I don't want a root or jailbreak detection. And everyone that wants to look can look at what's happening on the application. Concerning drone hardening, so it's important to protect not only the application that controls the drone, but also the drone itself. So of course, we have a protected embedded system, and the first protection is that we have no mechanism for which a user can connect remotely. So that's not a feature that's part of the drone. And this means that a malicious attacker would not circumvent that kind of feature or find a vulnerability that may enable him to take control of the drone. Our firmware is also digitally signed, which means that it prevents an attacker from tampering the system or modifying what's installed inside the drone. So you are sure as a user that when you update the drone, you are sure that the firmware comes from Parrot. You are sure that the firmware has not been modified, and then it's still has still full integrity. By default, on main product, we have WPA2 authentication and encryption. And just as I mentioned before, we also on certain products integrated other wireless protocols and other wireless chipsets. So we are also able to provide even stronger on encryption and authentication. Concerning the data that is stored on the drone, a few months ago we added a full disk encryption of the SD card, and we chose a pretty robust AES algorithm with a 512-bit key length. So that's one of the most robust algorithms that is used, and a kind of a standard for full disk encryption. There's a really good question about encryption, because when you're using your drone, you may think that you need to have the encryption key written somewhere on the drone. And the way we work is that there's a key that is transferred from the ground control station to the drone. And inside the drone, this specific key is used only in volatile memory, which means that if an adverse party catches your drone, even if this adverse party installed memory components and use forensics techniques to recover the keys, they can't. So if a drone is caught, then the adverse party cannot read anything, nor your photos or videos or nothing. With almost the same principles, we also have additional protections against such forensics analysis to protect flight data and certain information such as return to home or return to position, and that's enabled but only on our security edition. That's where we are today, but as I mentioned, there's a fabulous team at Parrot and hundreds of great engineers, and everyone is dedicated to security and really interested into improving even more the cyber security of our drones. So I think that today we already have a great level of security, but important to note, we are going to have even better features in the next weeks, months, and years. So one of the example, and that's just one example among several, but we announced a partnership with WiseKey that was back in July. And WiseKey is one of the main manufacturer of hardware security component. So they produce, for example, secure element, which is FIPS 140-2 compliant, which is common criteria certified. And that's great because that allows to securely store certain keys and to compute that some cryptographic functions in a secure way. And the fact that it's FIPS compliant means that the keys are generated in a safe way, that when we use randomness, that's real randomness, and every cryptographic features, it is done the right way. So stay tuned, because with that kind of improvement, in a few weeks or months, we are going to announce even greater security features on our drones. It's about all. So I think that we've got a couple of minutes for questions.
Yes, so thank you very much, Victor, for your presentation. Just really, really interesting. And, I hadn't seen the moving landing pad of the drone there on the back of the vehicle. I can see there's a lot of good applications for that. And, especially from a manufacturer's point of view, in the thick of the whole privacy and data security debate, it was really interesting hearing from you. So we do have a few questions there that I'll go through. And, on top of the no-fly zones, I'm sure there's a bit of discussion around that, balancing the fact that you mentioned the no-fly zones is actually a privacy issue, potentially, because of that data sharing. So that's quite interesting. So I'll go through some of the questions. The first one was from Tim, and he said, is the 32 camera zoom a combination of optical and digital zoom?
Yeah, 30 times zoom. The 32 times zoom is digital. So the fact is that when you're piloting your drone, if you've got a great camera, you can't display all the picture on the smartphone, or even if you've got a tablet, you can be able to see every details of this feature. So we use both digital and optical zoom. And one of the main added value of ANAFI USA is that we've got two cameras for the day vision. One with a large field of view, which is used for flying, and one with a great zoom, which allows us to go further than most standard zooms. So that's why there's, if I go back to the picture of ANAFI, that's why there's 3 cameras on the drone. If you can see my screen. It was something like just here, no, just before.
That's the one.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure. Yeah, that was the zoom, but here you can see the 3 optics. So on the right, that's the FLIR boson, but on the left, there's 2 camera and one for the zoom and one for a wide angle.
Okay, interesting. And geez, it really was some crazy zoom there for such a small system. So quite interesting. All right, we've got some more questions. There was a question from Jonathan that said, in terms of finding the users or the owner of Parrot drones or the ANAFI USA, are the user details tied to the purchase model? And they're asking because can you assist law enforcement to ID users?
Actually, we already had a couple of questions from law enforcement which ask questions about certain users flying in certain areas, and if we follow the legal process in France, we may provide some data, but we can do that only in the case that this user previously chose to share data with Parrot. Because of course, if the user don't, then we don't have any data. But what we also previously did, and I had an exchange with Christopher a few months or even more than 1 year ago. We already helped Interpol and police in Europe do some forensics tasks. We had questions about how the flight logs were managed, how they could recover certain information. And of course, because we are dedicated to security, it's really important for us to help every public safety entity. We will do that every time we can.
Very interesting. Okay. All right. And there's another question here from Paul as well that said, at times, no-fly zones apply to everyone when authorized by the Aviation Authority, for example, in the US. In an incident area, it is only permission of incident commander. So I guess if there's a no-fly zone and it's in an incident area, how does that work?
For me, it's up to the drone operator to fly responsibly and to take into account that there's no-fly zones and incident areas.
Yeah, short and simple. Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. All right. And there was another one from Alan, and I think this was along the lines of something we had answered before, but basically around, has Parrot found a balance in providing security for the UAV, from being affected by countermeasures?
Mm-hmm.
If you can try and answer that one.
For me, the most important balance is that we decide not to implement some features that we implement for security edition of ANAFI, and we may choose not to implement those features in the consumer version of the drone. And the volatile flight data is one example. So if you've got an ANAFI USA security edition, then this means that if your drone is catched by an adverse party, this adverse party won't be able to do forensics. But if you buy a professional or consumer version of ANAFI, you won't have that kind of features that is dedicated to defense and security.
Right, makes sense. So that separation between the ANAFI USA and the consumer versions, got it. Okay. Another question here, and this actually ties into something I was going to ask you. You said that you want security researchers to look at your applications. So what kind of incentives could they expect from trying to look at the applications? Are you talking about responsible disclosure or some other type of program?
So first, for several years now, I've been giving drones to a few security researchers so that they can check our security. And if you are interested by that, you can just write me at victor.vullard@parrot.com or connect on LinkedIn or whatever. And we may arrange that. And I can share with you also that in the next few weeks, we will set up a bug bounty. So as of today, we are in the process of defining this kind of bounty we can propose and how we will process. And especially, we want to make sure that the most skilled security researchers are also able to look at the security of our drones. And that may be difficult, first, because we may want to do that also for drones that are not on the market yet. So do that on prototypes. And today, it's also difficult for a security researcher to buy a $10,000 drone, because that's a lot of money and that's expensive, and most security researchers can afford that. So we are setting up a mix of private and public bug bounty, so that we can have a good balance on having something that is open enough, but also for some dedicated version of drones, we may have kind of a private bug bounty, which we do only with selected researchers, to which we will give drones and everything they need so that they can check security and get rewards if they find something.
Well, yeah, I think that's quite an interesting step forward in trying to be proactive about security, often in a type of environment where security is compliance driven, and trying to get things done so you can get them out of the door, but it takes on a different approach. So yeah, that's really interesting, and I'm sure some of the cybersecurity focused attendees will be interested in that. So thank you very much, Victor. Really appreciate the presentation. There are one or two other questions, but because we're right before time, I think we might just have one more, and then we'll have a little break before the next speaker. So the last question I have for you was, what did you mean by wireless chips on the drones?
I mean that we are using Wi-Fi chips for regular drones, and we also have the capacity to use completely different chips and protocols. Okay.
Well, hopefully that answered the question. And Victor, again, thank you very much for coming on today. We appreciate your presentation, and thanks for everything you talked about, and we'll see you again another time.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.